Hi, Yinnies, and welcome to a Yin Yoga Podcast. If you're new around here, welcome, welcome. If you are a familiar, welcome back. Um, if you are a familiar, if you haven't already, would you please take a moment to do one of these things or all of these things? Make sure you're following or subscribed to the show. So on YouTube, you can just do it below the video. On Apple, if you click the episode, there's a little three dots. I think they're called eclipse or something, dots. Click that and then scroll down and there's a follow show. And if you are on Spotify, there's a follow button right under the graphic. So if you click on the show and the episode, there's a follow button right under the podcast art that you could follow. So if you have not already, that would be wonderful. I would be grateful. That makes sure that you never miss an episode, which helps you and me. And then if you've already been following or subscribing, then take a moment to offer a review. So I'm assuming that if you're a repeat listener, that this podcast has helped you in some way, maybe with your teaching or inspiration or helping you with questions that you have or stuff that's come up in class. So if that is the case, would you kindly offer me a 5-star review? On Apple, you can do 5 stars. You could also leave a written review. Either or would be amazing. If you want brownie points, you could do both. And on Spotify, you can only do stars, but you can also now leave comments under the episode. So I would be super grateful if you did that. Let me know what you thought of the episode. Same thing on YouTube. Once you've subscribed, leave me some comments below. Let me know what you liked about the episode, what your ahas were, etc., etc. This is also a great place to offer me any questions, quandaries, confusions, conundrums, or conniptions that you may have about yin and yin adjacent things. So if something's come up in your class or you're confused about something and you'd like me to cover it on the podcast, please get at me and let me know. Some of you know this because you've heard me say it before, that my biggest fear with starting this podcast would be running out of ideas of what to talk about because it is very niched. So help me help you. If you've got a question, a quandary, a confusion, a conundrum, please let me know. And you could send it to me Instagram, you could email me via my website, you could post it below in the comments on Spotify or on YouTube. Those are some of the ways that you could let me know what you want me to cover. I would be super grateful. Instagram, DMs, that works too. Don't DM me on Facebook. I don't really spend much time on Facebook. It looks like I do, but I don't. I go in briefly, I check the Yin Yoga group, I do a couple things and I get out. I don't enjoy Facebook, but on Instagram, feel free, send me a DM if you have any topic ideas. Okay, today is probably going to be a pretty brief episode, but I feel like it needed to be covered because the question I'll often get, and you'll often see in groups, is what Yin Yoga books should I get? What Yin Yoga book should I start with? And so I will periodically do a book review. And usually if I'm offering a book review, not always, but usually I will have interviewed the person as well. And that is the case with this one. So I want to talk today about Bernie Clark's book. And I'm going to just show you a couple of the versions that I have for those of you that are watching on YouTube. So I've already interviewed Bernie Clark. There's part 1 and part 2. And if you ever want to see the former episodes, if you click in the show notes, there's a link that says see all episodes at a glance. And that'll take you to a Google Doc that I have that is an ongoing list of all of the episodes I've done with links so that you can listen to them. So please take advantage of that. So I have already interviewed Bernie. Depending when this comes out, it may actually be in this season. I think it might be. So you won't have to scroll back very far. There's a part 1 and a part 2. Highly recommend you check those 2 interviews out, because I did a lot of like Q&A with Bernie on things that I read in his book. So I don't want to go into kind of the blow by blow of all the things in the book that I did or didn't like or confused me or whatever, because I did that in my interview with him, but I will do a bit of an overview. And one of the reasons that I wanted to do Bernie's book is because it's sort of like, dare I say, the Yin Bible, kind of. So I've already done an episode also on Paul, my teacher Paul's book. But I will tell you, when I was in training with Paul, and if we were to ask him, is there a textbook that we need, or is there a book that we should grab? He always said, grab Bernie's book, like bring Bernie's book. And so, this, if you are a Yin teacher and a Yin practitioner, and like a serious Yin practitioner, and you don't have Bernie's book, there's a hole there. Go get it right now. So that I want to say, it is sort of like the Bible of Yin Yoga books. Let's talk about its evolution as well. So when I first got Bernie's very, very first book, it was and he talks about this in his interview, he had a newsletter that would go out, and people would, love the newsletter, but then they would be like, yeah, but I'd like to have a paper copy, like it's online, and, blah, blah, blah. And so, he had some PDFs, and people were like, yeah, but the PDFs were too long. And so anyways, eventually he compiled all of those sort of topics into a book that he called Yin Sights. Now, I don't have my copy of Yin Sights so I can't show you. And those of you that aren't watching on YouTube, you won't see these anyway, but I will hold them up. The reason being that I have a book problem. Like if I was addicted to anything other than listening to podcasts, it's probably books. And so when Bernie got, upgraded that version, essentially, he took his Yin Sights, and a publisher kind of came to him and was like, hey, how'd you like to do a yoga book? And then they edited it and stuff like that. And so he took some of it out. So it was a reasonable length. And that's when the second evolution of that information came out I'm holding it up, so if you're not on YouTube, you won't see it, but in this book. So this is The Complete Guide to Yin Yoga, the Philosophy and Practice of Yin Yoga. And there's a little mention there from Paul. Bernie Clark's The Complete Guide to Yin Yoga is one of the best yoga resources available. Agreed. So this was like the first published by a publisher version. So he took his Yin Sights, he put all that into a book that was self-published, people could get, and then a publisher came to him, and this is what came out of that. Now you can tell I've obviously spent some time reading it. For those of you looking at it, you can see all the purple sticky notes sticking out of it. And I didn't even know until before getting ready to interview Bernie that there was a third version. So I started rereading this book, which Bernie signed for me. Well, he signed for me and my partner, because my partner went to his training, and I said to him, here, take my book, but get him to sign it for me. And so anyways, he mentioned my partner in there too. So this was the book that I was rereading, getting ready to interview Bernie. You can see all the sticky notes for comments, questions, things I wanted to ask him, etc. And then I got 90% through this and realized there was an even newer version of this book. So then it evolved, and I think he said 2012. I'm just going to look inside the cover to see. Oh no, this one. So the first one, this one must have come out in 2012. So there was Yin Sights, which was the newsletter. Then the first edition of The Complete Guide to Yin Yoga. Just looking at the date. Yes, in 2012. That was my second version of Bernie's book that I bought. And then once I realized, as I got 80% through that and wanted to invite Bernie on the podcast, that actually there was a newer version, this one. Again, same title, The Complete Guide to Yin Yoga, Philosophy and Practice, Bernie Clark. I'm holding it up for those on YouTube. This one came out in 2019. And so I had to go back and reread from the beginning the 2019 version. And there were several changes that he made, just kind of as yoga professionals, one of the things that hopefully we're doing is we're always learning and growing new information and expanding our own kind of thoughts and feelings about the world and the yoga and etc. And so he did go back and do a few edits to things from the previous version in this version. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of the history of the book before I talk about the actual book. I strongly believe that even more so than my teacher, Paul Grilly, although I love Paul and always want you to buy his book and support him. But if you're going to buy one Yin Yoga book to start, just one, that's all you got the budget or the time for right now, it's definitely Bernie's book. It's this one, The Complete Guide to Yin Yoga, Philosophy and Practice. At this point, this is the best resource that I've ever read on Yin Yoga. And it's a good combination of kind of the history of yin and then like a lot of the sciencey stuff, so if you want to deep dive into fascia and piezoelectricity and all these kinds of things, if that's the kind of student you are, you like to nerd out, then definitely you're going to like Bernie's book. But it's also got a good amount of asana as well in here. And it's got some asanas that would not be in Paul's book, because, a lot of Paul's teachers that he trained kind of started evolving the asana practices and adding more and more practices in. So there's a lot of really good asana pictures as well in here. And you even see some use of props, which is amazing. Probably not still as propped as I would do if I was making a book, which I'm slowly working on. I would offer a lot more variations and props, but there's definitely some good options in here for like how to prop poses and things like that. So he's got some upper body stuff in here, which, previously was not in Paul's book. There was no upper body in, and Bernie's got some in here. I really generally speaking, love this book. Now, there's a few things, of course, like there is with anything, that I would change. And one of which would be there's two things in here that kind of stand out to me. It'd be great to have even more pictures, but I realize at a certain point, we gotta just call it a day with the pictures, perhaps. But I would love to see even more variations and versions of the poses in pictures and ways to use props than there is. So it's already really good that way, but it would be nice to see a little bit more accessibility. The models in this practice, again, are super flexible. So there isn't as many pictures of kind of variations and versions as I would like, but there's still plenty compared to previous books. So don't let me saying that stop you from grabbing this book and checking it out, because there's still plenty of options with props. I just am like a prop queen, and so I would like more. I would like more and more accessible versions. The only other thing that I would mention, two other kind of, if I was going to critique based on my own experience, is that he does mention counter poses a lot, and I'm not big on that. That's a conversation that maybe him and I will have to have at another time. I learned yin from Paul Grilly, and what he calls the rebound was of the utmost importance. And sometimes that rebound might be done in some sort of a moving shape, and sometimes it would just be you lying still or seated still. And Paul basically, he didn't over guide what you should be doing in your rebound time. He just kind of, let us do what we needed to do. So he might say something like, lay on your back, but if somebody was seated because that was better for them, Paul doesn't care. Whereas Bernie really focuses on counter poses. And I am not really in love with that. I'm now that, just to be clear, I'm not saying you shouldn't counterpose in yin. I'm just saying I'm not a fan of pose, counterpose, pose, counterpose, pose, counterpose. And this again comes down to a difference in training from myself and from Bernie, and differences in lineage. So, Bernie did a lot of Ashtanga yoga over the years. And in that form of yoga, there would very much be this sort of pose, counterpose, pose, counterpose. However, I come from the Iyengar camp. And so we would finish one direction of movement of the spine completely in the sequence. And then we would put in a twist or something lateral before we would go in the opposite direction. And if you want more on that, I did a whole episode on sequencing where I break this down in detail. But just to mention that, to me, rebound time is the ticket. I'm not a like, do this pose now, do a movement based counter pose. It just doesn't work for me. It's not how I was trained. It's not why I fell in love with yin. I don't like it much. But again, my own personal preference. So that's just a Nick's preference, not a something wrong with the book thing. So he does focus on counter poses because obviously he does in his practice and his teaching. Whereas I'm not a big fan of the counter pose thing. And then my final critique, if I was going to give a critique to this, and this did come out in our interview, is that, and this isn't just Bernie that's done this, this is several yoga teachers in Yin that have done this, where they include Chinese medicine and meridian information in their work without having studied it in depth. And so it can come across a little bit overly simplified and can leave things feeling a little bit, a little too simplistic. And then it loses some of its accuracy when it becomes overly simplistic. So what words people are using, what they're saying that the pose does to the meridians, all of that is a bit lost oftentimes. And I would say also in this book, although he does make a notable difference from book one, where he sounds a bit more dogmatic about it. And then in book two, he's a little more, some people believe this could be happening. But as a pet peeve in general, not just with Bernie, but just with any yoga teacher, I would really rather them not include Chinese medicine information in their work if they haven't studied it in depth. Because I feel like by the time they introduce teachers to it, and then the teachers then take what they learned and the telephone game happens, now we hear all kinds of crazy things in yin yoga groups about teachers and meridians that are totally inaccurate. And it's because they've taken what one teacher said, who probably wasn't necessarily expert enough to make those statements, and then they've digressed with them further, and now we end up in this murky, weird Chinese medicine soup of inaccuracies and oversimplifications. So in my opinion, I would wish for Bernie and for everybody, do not include Chinese medicine information in your books or in your teacher trainings unless you have studied Chinese medicine. And it's really only kind of the end of it, his book, really. He's got like a whole bunch that he could have focused on. So where I think Bernie really excels, though, is if you want to hear somebody talk about fascia, like in detail, definitely Bernie's book. So he's really up on the science stuff. And so if that's the kind of rabbit hole that you love to go down, you're going to find tons of information here in Bernie's book. So I love this book for that. And this is why I will recommend it to students. That I don't recommend that my students have to buy this in order to take my training, but it is in my continuing resources, so that if students have just this real kind of nerdy love for going down these rabbit holes with fascia and things like this, this is definitely the yin book to grab. I just wish that he left the Chinese medicine stuff to the side. But I also wish that with several other teachers and their books as well. He talks a lot about alignment and anatomy in here. There's some good sequences in here. Overall, it's just a fantastic book. And I think if you are a yin teacher and you don't have this book, what the hell? That's crazy. Go get this book. And even if you are a yin practitioner, this is the book. So if you have to only buy one yin yoga book at this point, at this time of this recording, this is the one. Even though I love my teacher, Paul, and I'm glad I have his book, if I were to only buy one, this would be the one. So it's The Complete Guide to Yin Yoga, Philosophy and Practice by Bernie Clark. There's my 2 cents on the book. There's a little bit of the history of how it went from Yin Sights to this third version of this third incarnation of Bernie's work in print. Bernie's, of course, got a whole bunch of other books as well, especially on like anatomy and skeletal variation, which are great if you learn well from them. They're more like textbooks than something you'd sit down and read, but those are great too. But this is a Yin Yoga podcast. So, of course, I'm going to talk about Yin Yoga. So I hope that you find that helpful. This question comes up all the time from teachers and in the Facebook group that I'm in, the Yin Yoga Network. Shout out to the Yin Yoga Network, where people will ask for what books should I start with? And if you're only going to buy one to start, it's got to be this one, Bernie Clark's The Complete Guide to Yin Yoga. Now, if you got a little more money, I would also recommend grabbing Paul's book and Sarah Power's book. I've already done a review and a discussion of Paul's book in a previous season, and Sarah's will be coming up at some point. But if you've only got the money for one, grab this one. I hope that you find that helpful. All right, short one. I hope that you find that information helpful. And if you don't have this book, go and get it. Seriously, you can't. If you're a Yin teacher and you don't own this book, tisk, 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 I say. All right, that's it for now. Until we meet again. Bye for now.